All right, fans, we're back at it. Joe the Fan here with Just Win Bets, baby. We're here with, of course, the Queen of Baskets. Queen, welcome back here, my friend. I hope everything is well with you. What was your thought with the Commissioner's Cup between the Indiana Fever and the Minnesota Lynx, which you called? You said Indiana plus the points, and it was getting at plus 11 there, courtesy of FanDuel. So that was a huge win for us on that one. What were your thoughts with that game without having Caitlin Clark and other players in that game not being, available?
I think the first quarter was fine, and then in the second quarter, man, I don't know what happened to Minnesota. It was like they forgot how to play basketball. Like they couldn't make a shot, and they looked like they were running in syrup. So, I mean, you've heard players, and Kelsey Plum particularly came out talking about the volume of games in the same time frame that players are used to, and that everybody's tired right now. And I just wonder if that kind of had an impact on the Lynx there. I mean, the Fevers played the same game, so they have the same excuses or reasons to have been underperforming, and they weren't. I mean, Indy ratcheted up its defense, and Minnesota just never met the challenge from that point on. It surprised me that it was kind of the runaway that it was. It wasn't close after the Fever got the lead, and they just really never looked back. And I don't think Nafisa Collier's healthy. I mean, obviously she's missed time with the back injury, but she looked stiff to me in that game. Leah Boston handled her. I mean, in my video I was like, who's going to check her? Leah Boston? Well, Leah Boston did it. She held her down, and I did not expect anything that Minnesota did. But props to Indy, man. They came out, they took care of business. They were inspired, and they won it. They have a banner to hang now, so good for them.
Yeah, not only Boston, but definitely Natasha Howard showed up. 16 points, 2 steals, 12 rebounds. She was killing the glass, and I love her play. Anybody else that stuck out, through this game that you thought was having a great game?
I mean, Natasha Howard is always that strong, steady player that does the dirty work. She's been solid for them all year, but she's not going to jump out at you on a stat sheet. You're talking, setting screens and taking good angles and making good defensive plays. I mean, Natasha Howard draws the strongest assignment that's a post player for every team, right? She's guarding all your fours. She's guarding your Stewies. She's guarding those folks, and obviously you can switch in and out with a little bit of flexibility with Aaliyah Boston. Like Aaliyah Boston will guard an Asia Wilson, and I mean she's been very solid for them, so it was nice to see her get the recognition that I feel like she kind of deserves and doesn't often get. In terms, I mean, Kelsey Mitchell, my concern when they had the personnel that they did before they went out and acquired Ari McDonald was who's going to run that point, because they tried it some with Kelsey Mitchell last year, and it didn't really work. Her point production suffered a lot, but I mean, she was in there running it some last night. Colson stepped in and had a decent showing, and Sid Colson's really good to show up in the most random moments, right, and provide a boost of some sort. He certainly did that, but I would say Colson off the bench. I was disappointed in Lexi Hull, honestly, and it was one of my picks, but she just kind of sat on the bench and disappeared, and here lately she's been playing real feisty and inspired when she didn't, but Indy got the win anyway, so good for them. But Courtney Williams couldn't hit a bucket. Fee looks stiff. I mean, Natisha Heideman's usually good for Minnesota to come in and make an impact, and she just didn't, man. They were flat. Alana Smith, where was she? I mean, she popped up on the offensive end for sure. She was probably the most solid thing they had last night. So just all around weird.
Yeah, you mentioned the bench, Colson coming off the bench for Indiana. I like Sophia Cunningham. She was going right there in the corner. I mean, they pretty much went small. After a certain amount of time there. And I agree with you where Minnesota not only couldn't hit the side of a barn, but when you're only scoring 7 points in the second quarter, you're not going to get anything done.
I mean, it was what, an 8.5 stretch at the end for the last 8.5 minutes of the quarter. They couldn't get a bucket, and you're not going to win a game like that. And then to come out, all right, well, maybe if you come out and you're riled up the third quarter, you're going to take it back, and they just meh. I mean, it was usually you see WNBA players when it's the cup time, they play because money's on the line, and that's not a lot that they don't get a lot of it, right? Sure. And so it was just, I don't know. Minnesota surprised me, and I probably should be talking more about Indiana and the good job that they did more than Minnesota and what had happened was, but I'm floored that Minnesota gave out that poor of a showing in a big game.
Sure. Let's now move to there's no games tonight, of course. on this Wednesday, July the 2nd, but again, the next games, and Kathy has it, a lot of games on Thursday, July the 3rd. So we'll break that down. But before we even break that down, we had the commissioner, Kathy, on during halftime. I know you and I watched the game, and we were texting each other off air. And, it seemed like she was talking a little bit of the CBA. She was talking about a lot of stuff. Do you care to comment on it? It seemed like it was a clear way where she could at least, it was amazing what she announced. Look, we're expanding. We talked about that in our previous video, but she had an opportunity to say some things. Did she miss that point there?
The interesting thing to me is it's usually around All-Star Weekend where you start hearing leaks when it comes to discussions that the union is having with the league, and it's right on time, right? And so, obviously the CBA expires. I think it's October 1 that it expires, and then after that, you get into a labor dispute, essentially. And there's no one that benefits from having a lockout in this situation at all. The momentum that the league has right now, the exposure that it brings to these players, they've found avenues to continue to make more money and supplement what income that they do make in the WNBA, but it's not going to replace it entirely, right? And so everyone's best interest here is to get a deal done. And then the question is, what are the major issues? And you can hear it in the subtext of the comments that are coming out from Kathy last night at halftime, but also from Satu Sabli in a recent press conference, right? Mm-hmm. She was at a press conference, and then she was talking about how, okay, well, that's great. We're expanding. We love that, but also take care of the players that we have already. And she's talking about making sure that there's some sort of mechanism to make sure that the less invested in franchises, the ones with no facilities, the one where players don't even have their own locker and they have to show up like they're coming to a Planet Fitness and take their stuff with them when they leave. It's not a professional environment.
Right.
And so it's obviously in the interest of the players to continue to make sure that the environment for the current players is as helpful and beneficial for them to be the pro athletes that they are. But then for the league is interested in expansion and growth and more and this and that. And, the players have mentioned things like expanding the roster limit. The current roster max size right now for the W is 12. Right. And you always get in a situation where 2 or 3 people get hurt. You've got fewer than a full squad. Like, how are you even running a practice? Right. I think a roster limit of 15, maybe 16 is reasonable. And it's an intriguing idea since the WNBA likes to be the training ground. We don't have a G League. So do you have a couple developmental slots like the PWHL does where you can slide those people up and in and out, give them some roster flexibility, but maybe not pay them a full amount? But they're there and they're learning, but they get that benefit to raise the next generation and keep things rolling. Kathy's interested in money, and I get it. That's her job. Her job is to put the owners in the best position for the most revenue possible. But the players are more focused on inside the house than building more houses on the block. And I think that's fair. But it's going to be interesting to see the discussions and discourse that comes out, because the players have started dropping some stuff on social. It's very calculated. It's very uniform. And then as Kathy's asked to comment on things, with her having to have more of a public persona with it being All-Star Week and such, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out.
We're here with the Queen of Baskets, of course, Just Win Bets Baby. Let's jump right into Thursday's games right before the holiday. And we'll start, of course, with your Las Vegas Aces taking on the Indiana Fever, the recent champions of the Commissioners League. The current price is, the spread is at Las Vegas at -1.5, the total at 163.5. You look at someone like Wilson, that's of your Las Vegas Aces there, who's averaging about 21, 22 points a game and about 10 rebounds. So that's pretty much a double-double machine right there. Boston, what we talked about just earlier, is averaging about 17 points a game with about 8 points, 8 rebounds a game as well, and about, give or take, four assists a game. Where do you lean here on this particular game?
It's hard for me to bet the Aces just because I love them and my heart is with them being successful. I think it's going to be an interesting test. Obviously, my first question before I'm putting any money on anything in with the Indiana Fever right now is Caitlin Clark going to play? And then you can make your decision from there. I'm going to go with she's not playing because she didn't play yesterday. So I'm going to go with they're going to be cautious with her return. And I'm going to say as good as that Indiana Fever team looked yesterday, that's going to give Vegas all the more reason to show up and show out, because now they've got some attention. excuse me, they've got the champions now, right, coming to town, or they're going to the champions one, and it's a chance for Asia Wilson to right some wrongs. The battles between Aaliyah Boston and Asia Wilson are always interesting underneath, and Asia Wilson has won most of those. It's very kind of Scooby and Scrappy Doo with both of those players coming out of South Carolina being national champion bigs for that team. Um, but the last time they played, I mean, the Aces won, right? But Asia Wilson didn't have the greatest game. Asia Wilson has been turning the ball over this year more than ever. And that's something that she's got to clean up. But I think it's interesting to have the Fever, even as well as they're playing coming off their performance last night, going up against these Aces now with Nalissa Smith. How much has she been able? She was in Vegas yesterday, was on their social media. So how much has she been able to assimilate, learn, pick up? Is Becky going to slot her in? Is she going to start her? I don't think she'll start her over Stokes from a respect standpoint. How much is she going to play? How are they going to defend her? Because now they're the first ones to get the crack at defending the new look Aces whenever all of the pieces are out there. So all of that, I'm going with my Aces, especially at the 1.5. That to me is a good line to drop a little bit on.
Let's move to the next game, the second game, the major number of games that's going to be played on Thursday, July the 3rd here. We've got, of course, the Sparks of Los Angeles Sparks taking on the champs in New York Liberty. So Liberty are back home after a long road trip, right? Liberty at minus 11.5 right now. The total being, of course, at at a total of 170.5. And then some players to watch, of course, we talked about Plum, who's been averaging about 21 points a game, about 3 rebounds per game, taking on, as we call her, Stewie, right? And it's almost the same numbers there, 21 points a game, but the difference is the rebounds. She's doubled that, where it's like six rebounds and about 4 assists a game. So where do you lean towards here with Sparks and the Liberty?
The Liberty are a completely different team with and without Jonquel Jones. She's out right now with a leg injury, ankle, knee, unclear. I think it's an ankle. And without them, they've really struggled. But that said, the length that the Liberty has with their front court is a problem. You know, they'll have Leonie Fibich back from Eurobasket. She's like 6'4", like a 6'4" point guard. Come on. And she'll be going against Kelsey Plum, right? And obviously they've gone against each other with Plum's time with the Aces, and then she's still in the semis, right? They went against each other in the semis. So it's not like there's not any familiarity there, but Plum going inside. Hamby's been fine. Kennedy Burke for the Liberty has really been showing up and out. She's kind of slid into that role with JJ and Niara Sabali as well. They've been holding it down, but I like the Liberty to win this game. That's a big line for me to feel comfortable laying for them right now, just because without JJ, they're extremely volatile.
All right, let's move to the third game, of course, for this big lineup on Thursday. We have, of course, the Seattle Storm traveling to the Atlanta Dream. And you've praised this before there, Queen, where Gray has been balling all season. She's averaging about close to 20 points per game and about 5 rebounds a game. But she's been dishing it too, about 4 assists. I mean, what more can you ask from a player like that?
I mean, Alicia Gray is having a career year, is what's happening. She's always been an elite player. She's been extremely underrated. She's a quiet player. She doesn't make a lot of noise on socials. I think she got a lot of more fan exposure and love at Unrivaled. And I think Unrivaled really gave the public a look at who these players are. And if you aren't someone who's deeply invested in the league and already seek out that content, it was there for you. Unrivaled was very prevalent on social media. So it was easy. She's an easy player to fall in love with. She's very shucks. She's very South Carolina. She was at South Carolina with Asia Wilson when they won their title back in that first one with Dawn Staley. She's an underrated player. And in a year where you have Brianna Stewart, who's being good but not great, and you have an Asia Wilson who's good but not what she was last year, and she's turning the ball over, and you have a year where Nafisa Collier was on her revenge tour, but now she's injured, it could be a year where Alicia Gray gets tossed into the MVP conversation, and that would be 100% deserved. She is playing at an elite level this year.
The spread for that one, they have it at Seattle minus 1.5, the total being 161.5, currently being told to us by our friends at FanDuel. Do you like Atlanta as a dog here?
I do like Atlanta as a dog here. This game is going to be the battle of the bigs. This is Ezzy Magbagor and Dominique Malonga versus Bree Jones and Brittany Griner. This is going to be a paint battle. But then if the paint neutralizes, you've got Skylar Diggins-Smith, Skylar Diggins, who's also having an elite year this year. You know, she wasn't named an all-star starter, and in my opinion, should have been, but that's another conversation for a different time. But, you know, Skylar's playing at an elite level, but Skylar's also small. And the problem with Atlanta for that is Atlanta's big. Atlanta's front court is big also. You've got Alicia Grace, she's 6'6". You've got Ryan Howard, she's 6'6". You know, their length is a problem. Their athleticism is a problem. You know, Gabby Williams for Seattle has been a shark this year. She's leading the league in steals. It is an ungodly number that she has. But the last game that they had, she kind of disappeared. And then where's Ezzy Magbagor been this year? She was elite, you know, and battling Asia Wilson, you know, in those iconic Seattle Vegas matchups last year and this year, she has just disappeared. She's still good, and she's capable of being what she's shown that she can be, but that is a sexy matchup if you like post play, is Seattle versus Atlanta. I like the guards of Atlanta better than I like the guards of Seattle, even as well as Skylar Diggins has been playing.
Let's move to our next game, and this is another big spread here. It's currently at -8.5. I'm referring, of course, to the Phoenix Mercury they're traveling to Dallas, taking on the Wings. Again, Phoenix at -8.5. The total at 167.5, but you gotta like the play of not only Paige Beckers, but from Dallas. But what about Thomas from Phoenix?
Yeah, that's to be expected. Casual fans may not know Alyssa Thomas, but Alyssa Thomas has been elite in this league for a long time. Mm-hmm. The last 2 years, she has been in the final 3 for MVP voting, and some would argue she should have gotten it. And she is a triple-double machine. She leads the history of the league in triple-doubles. She's going to fill up a stat sheet. She's not going to do anything that's necessarily amazing, special, and is going to wow you. She's playing with 2 torn labrums and has been for years. You know, she doesn't have an outside shot. She doesn't have a mid-range because she can't shoot that far. She shoots free throws. She shoots them one-handed. So the fact that she can make as much of an impact with as little body as she's using is incredible. She's not doing anything unusual. She's just in a place and has different pieces around her, and her team is more successful, and she's getting the love, and she deserves it. Who I'm kind of impressed with on the low right now, small sample size, is Leigh Rue for Dallas. Ever since that trade, her coming over from Seattle, she went from someone who comes in off the bench and waves quickly and goes and sits back down to she is contributing to them. And it's good to see her get some minutes. It's good to see her have some chemistry there, developing with Paige. And, you know, it's good for Dallas. It's just feel good vibes there. I'm interested in how's Dejanay Carrington going to respond to Nalissa Smith being traded. You know, was that kind of a front office challenge to her to get her to perform at a level where she's more used to performing? Nalissa Smith, they're in a relationship they've been off and on again since college. So, you know, her boo got shipped out. Is she gonna pout? Is she gonna battle? You know, which Dejanay are we going to see? She's a professional, so I don't think we'll see a full pout, but is she going to play angry or is she going to play upset? And that's going to be the question there, because Dejanay Carrington is a defensive player of the year type player, and this year she has not been.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's look at the final game. And here's what I love about this, Queen, is that we don't have to wait until 10 o'clock to watch these games tomorrow.
Because they're probably all on at 4 o'clock, my God.
So, yeah, we've got, of course, the game started, of course, tomorrow. Starting at 7, a couple games at 7. The Storm Atlanta game is at 7:30, and these last 2 games, the Phoenix Dallas is at 8 o'clock, and this one at 8 o'clock is between the Mystics and the Minnesota Lynx. Minnesota Lynx, again, another big spread here. Minnesota at -11.5. That's where it opened up. Total at 159.5. You've always said, or you've told me off air about Sykes being great and what she's brought to this organization. And then, of course, Court, you know, where she played last night. So your thoughts on this game?
Can we go back to the Phoenix game? Because I never answered your question.
No, that's okay.
I like Phoenix minus the points in the Dallas game. I love Leigh Rue. She's playing great. How about Paige, man? How about a rookie coming in and having a consistent impact and being as efficient as she's being? I do like Phoenix minus. Dallas, I don't think is quite there where they can contend, and Phoenix is just rolling. I mean, how about the Mercury this year, man? They're just coming in and making it happen. Now we're DC and
It's Washington, the Washington Mystics taking on the Minnesota Lynx. Minnesota at minus 11.5. That's another big number there, Queen, with the total being close to 160. So it's at 159.5. I've seen books at 159 flats, but that's a huge number, especially the way that Minnesota played last night in the Commissioner's Cup. I don't know if that's a concerning of the over-under on that one. But you have also mentioned something about Sites being great and what she's brought to the Washington Mystics. Your thought on this game?
And Brittany Sykes is an underrated player. She is again, much like Alicia Gray. She is low key. She doesn't have a social media presence. She comes in and gets it done. There's nothing sexy about her game. She's just really good. It's good to see her have the stage to be able to showcase that. Unfortunately, she's in Washington and has no guard help. Washington has a very talented backcourt. You know, they've got a log jam at the 4. Now they're shopping Aaliyah Edwards is what's coming. I don't know why they drafted Kiki Iriafen when they had Aaliyah Edwards, but clearly they're choosing Iriafen, and I can understand why. Minnesota, man, I'm not comfortable putting money on them right now just because I don't know who I'm going to get. I don't think Nafisa Collier's healthy. I don't think you're going to get them running at full speed, but I also don't think you're going to see a full system failure for them. Cheryl Reeve is too good of a coach to let that happen. Those players are too good of a team to let that happen. But is Courtney Williams going to be able to hit the ocean with a basketball is the question in that one. What I might look at there, depending on the number, is the under. Washington does not play fast.
Right.
Minnesota has not played fast lately. Can they? Yeah, man. If you get Courtney Williams going and Natisha Heidemann out there running around, they can put up some points. I think they're in the top or at the top among average points per game, Minnesota is, but they certainly haven't been lately. So if anything other than props in that one, I think I'm going to look at where the line is set for over-under.
We'll leave you with this final question, of course, there, Queen. As you know, recently, I know we're sending you to Indianapolis for the WNBA All-Star Game, but of course, you've got the starting lineups for both the East and West. There has been some talk about, of course, the Caitlin Clark, etc. I don't want to go focus on that, but what do you think? I guess my question is, what did you think of the starting lineups? Caitlin Clark is part of that, but as well as other athletes from the WNBA, that's well deserved to be part of that squad. But do you think that if you could choose right now, who would you take, the East or the West, for the All-Star game?
So the W doesn't do an East and a West; they do a player draft.
Okay,
so we started it. NBA is doing it now, so it's going to be your top 2 vote getters, right?
Right.
They're going to be Collier and Clark, and they're going to have a draft before the game, and they'll draft from those starters, and then they'll draft from the reserves. So who am I picking? I don't know, because I don't know who my options are at this point. But in terms of Clark, I know there's been a lot of noise about her being selected in the fan vote number 1, and in the media, what was it, 4? And then the player vote, it was lower, much lower, 9th, 12th, something like that.
Sure.
And I think that's being extremely overblown. I think a lot of coverage with Clark, most coverage with Clark is very polarizing, and it's either you love or you hate, and there's not a lot of room for nuance there.
Sure.
But I think it's important to understand that the way that we as the general populace voted for the All-Star game is the same way that the players voted. They weren't asked, rank your top 25 guards in the WNBA, and they all put Clark last. It was, who are your top 4 guards? Who are your top 6 front court players? That's how they voted. And people, well, there's no way she's the 9th best guard in the league. I would challenge that assertion personally, but if I'm voting for 4 guards this year,
right,
I'm not voting for Caitlin Clark. She's played half her team's games, full stop.
Right.
But even then, she's averaging what? Was she averaging 18 points a game? She's averaging 9-ish assists. But, she's also averaging 6 turnovers a game. And that's 2.5 more turnovers per game than whoever's in second place. And so she's not a perfect product. I don't think anyone necessarily expects her to be. But I think there's a place, and there needs to be a space for honest discourse about players without it being so clickbaity. The headlines, if you just look at them objectively and they're like, well, this person said this about Caitlin Clark. And it's like, at this point, I'm sure all 156 players in the W are tired of hearing about Caitlin Clark, including Caitlin Clark.
Sure.
Because it's just exhausting. But is there a vast media or player conspiracy that I don't like Caitlin Clark? I think people are just fatigued of hearing about her. But, for her to be named a starter, I don't have a problem with it. It's clearly what the fans want. But on merit, players vote on merit. And I think it's completely within reason to say that she's not, you know, in the top 5 guards this year. I would go, for me, in terms of being a starter, I think Kelsey Plum deserves to be there. I think Skylar Diggins deserves to be there. And there's some other players you can certainly talk about. You can talk about, Paige is there. Should Paige be a starter? That's another thing that's up for debate.
Sure, sure.
But all-star games are a balance of who folks want to see and who's performing well. And in that regard, folks want to see her. And when she's on the court, she's performing well. She just hadn't been in half her team's game.
Now that's a great take, and I appreciate your honest opinion on what is going on there with the Caitlin Clark situation, or quote unquote conspiracy, whatever that the universe, the WNBA universe is talking about. We'll leave you with this, of course, Quinn. That obviously you do our WNBA daily picks. It's been wonderful this year. But now we have an announcement. We've officially signed with, of course, the PWHL, which will start towards the end of the year. Well, I think January, correct, of next year.
I mean, we don't know. There's not a schedule. There's typically not a lot of time between schedule release and schedule play.
Okay.
I mean, it's a new league. This will be year 3 of the league. They just had their first round of expansion. There's a lot of lot to like there. And when it's new and it's volatile, it's a time for someone to be knowledgeable, to have some intelligent takes, and the potential to increase in one's investment and one's return is there. So.
Absolutely. So you'll be covering that for us right after the WNBA. I know you've been working on your little algorithms, what have you. So
been in the lab, man.
Yeah, you got to go back in the lab and get that work done. But I appreciate that. But that covers us for the WNBA for the Queen's Picks, and our coverage here for the WNBA for July 3rd. Guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We appreciate all the comments. We'll get back to you. And again, don't forget to hit that bell for it tells you that notification button that tells you that we're going to have a new video coming out. But for the Queen of Baskets there, we appreciate everything that you do for us. And for me, Joe the Fan, we will catch you next time.
Yes, sir.